Okay. It's hot today. Anyways, so this is a very fresh idea in my head, but I'm talking about a very old idea, and it's just come to my attention again. This idea of distance between the self and God. In the context of human suffering and human lack, which is very easily observable in life today. And what brought it to a focal point for me when thinking about this was the words of Jesus. I was hungry and you fed me. I was naked and a stranger and you clothed me and welcomed me in. I was in prison and you visited me. And in Matthew chapter 25, we see Jesus identifying his own subjectivity with the suffering of humanity and the world at large. So you have the personal subjectivity of Jesus voluntarily identifying as human suffering and human lack. And so when we encounter our own suffering and lack, whether we know it or not, we are encountering the subjectivity of Jesus, the voluntary subjectivity of Jesus. So in fact, when we feel most alienated and most alone and in the most pain, we actually encounter a radical closeness to the second person of the Trinity and, Jesus. And this puts a new perspective on feeling far from God or feeling estranged from oneself or one's source or one's being. Because in the very moment that we feel or that we objectively are suffering, we almost unknowingly, most of the time, take on a new subjectivity in the eyes of God. That of, the body of Christ suffering in the world. And it's completely the choice of Jesus to identify himself this way, in this subjectivity. And so from the other side, if you feel God sometimes as an absence or feel far from God, maybe there's an encouragement there to invert your perspective and see that feeling of absence as a reorienting of God's subjectivity away from himself towards you. And in that way, bringing you back into communion through the very act of you feeling a lack or some kind of pain. It was Corpus Christi Sunday a couple of Sundays ago, and I was feeling this sort of alienation, and I didn't know where it was coming from, and I felt reluctant to go to church that day. And then when I went and then found out it was Corpus Christi Sunday, I thought, this is it was a personal sign for me, because the Eucharist is a very solid affirmation of God's identification with you and your individual imperfect life, becoming an offering with all of its inconsistencies and pains and hopes and fears unto the Godhead, and being transformed into something pure and whole, and then given back to you to give to the world. And so what's actually happening is a reconstituting of pain, suffering, alienation into the very subjectivity of God. And by doing so, this heals you. It gives you a promise of meaning and healing. And at the same time, it heals the world by transforming the lack into the subjectivity of God and the healing of God. And it may not manifest in the moment as a change of circumstances, but that change of perspective can sometimes be felt immediately and sometimes be felt over a longer period. But regardless of what is felt, there has been a substantive change in the nature of that experience and the actuality. So, yeah, suffering as the subjectivity of Jesus, as a means of radical hope in any circumstance.